Most people think ancient Greece was all marble columns and wise philosophers debating democracy under olive trees. They picture noble warriors fighting for honor, while great thinkers shaped the foundations of Western civilization. But they're wrong. Dead wrong. Behind those beautiful temples and intellectual achievements lurked a system so brutal it would make modern human traffickers look merciful. And if you think you could survive in this world, think again. You'd probably end up as merchandise before you could say, "This is Sparta." Young boys were bought and sold like livestock. Their bodies treated as entertainment for the same men who wrote poetry about virtue and justice. Yeah, the same dudes philosophizing about the meaning of life were also running what was basically a trafficking ring with marble decorations. Let me paint you a picture of what your life would actually look like. The stone floor is cold beneath your knees. Your stomach clenches with hunger, but you know better than to ask for food before evening. Because asking for food when you're not supposed to, that's a beating. Maybe worse. The bronze shackle around your ankle has worn the skin raw, leaving crusty scabs that crack and bleed when you move. Through thick walls, you hear laughter from the main house. That particular kind of laughter that makes your blood freeze because you know what it means. Tonight there will be guests. And when there are guests, slaves like you become the entertainment. You're 15 years old, though birthdays stop mattering the day your family sold you to pay their debts. Time moves differently when you're property. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months, all marked by the same routine of service, submission, and survival. And before you start thinking, "Oh, I'd just escape," or "I'd fight back," let me stop you right there. You wouldn't. Nobody does. Here's why. This was reality for thousands of young men in ancient Greece. Not the cleaned up version taught in schools where philosophy and democracy shine bright enough to blind us to the shadows. Your high school history teacher conveniently forgot to mention that Socrates probably attended parties where kids were passed around like party favors. The selection began long before you understood what was happening. Maybe your family owed money to a wealthy landowner. Maybe raiders swept through your village during one of the endless wars that plagued the Greek world. Or maybe you were simply born beautiful in a world that saw beauty as something to be harvested and sold. In rural villages scattered across the Greek countryside, families lived on the knife's edge of survival. And I mean literally on the edge. One bad harvest, and you're basically selling your kids to keep from starving. It's like if your family went bankrupt, and the only way to pay off credit card debt was to auction off your little brother. A bad harvest, an injury to the father, a death in the family, any of these could push a household into debt. When creditors came calling, they weren't interested in empty promises or future earnings. They wanted payment in flesh. And guess what? You were flesh. Consider a small farming community nestled between olive groves. Houses are simple mud brick and thatch, with dirt floors and single rooms where entire families sleep together for warmth. Children run between houses, their laughter mixing with bleating goats and the distant sound of women grinding grain. It's a harsh life, but it's life. Then comes the drought, week after week of merciless sun beating down on withered crops. Olive trees produce only shriveled fruit. Barley fields turn brown and brittle. Wells that sustained the village for generations begin to run dry. Families start making choices no parent should ever make. First, they sell livestock, goats and sheep that represent their only wealth. Then comes jewelry, the few precious items passed down through generations. When those are gone, they start looking at their children with different eyes. And trust me, you don't want to be on the receiving end of those looks. Slave merchants arrive like vultures sensing death. They set up in the village center, chains and ropes coiled like metal serpents, ledgers filled with names and prices. They offer immediate payment for long-term contracts. 20 years of service for enough silver to keep a family fed through winter. It sounds reasonable when your children are literally starving, but you're 12 years old. You don't understand the mathematics of desperation. You only know that your father won't meet your eyes as he negotiates your price. Your father's literally haggling over you like you're a goat at a farmer's market. And the worst part, You still trust him because you're 12 and stupid. Your mother turns away when the merchant examines your teeth like you're a horse. You feel rough hands checking your muscles, evaluating your potential. You hear words like promising and good breeding and suitable for household service, but you don't understand what they mean. Not yet. The merchant counts silver coins into your father's palm. Each piece represents a year of your life. Your father's hands shake as he takes the money, but he takes it. Your mother covers her face and weeps, but she doesn't stop the transaction. They tell you it's temporary, that you'll earn money and return home a man, wealthy enough to buy your own land, maybe even take a wife. They promise you'll be treated well, learn valuable skills, and that this is an opportunity for advancement. The lies fall from their lips like honey from a broken comb, sweet but poisonous. The journey to the city is a nightmare of chained necks and blistered feet. You're part of a human caravan now, dozens of boys and young men linked together by iron and despair. The older ones don't talk much. They've learned that hope is just another word for future disappointment. Younger ones cry for their mothers until their voices give out, or until overseers beat the sound from their throats. The smart ones learn to cry silently. The dumb ones learn the hard way. You march through landscapes that would be beautiful under different circumstances. Rolling hills covered in olive groves, coastal roads where the sea sparkles like scattered diamonds, mountain passes where eagles soar overhead. But you see none of it. Your world has shrunk to the length of chain between you and the boy in front of you, to the rhythm of feet on stone, to the growing certainty that you will never see home again. It's like being on the most depressing nature hike in human history. At night, they chain you to stakes driven into the ground. You lie on your side in the dirt, listening to muffled sobs of other boys, feeling the weight of iron around your neck like a collar of fate. Sometimes merchants bring visitors to inspect their merchandise, men with soft hands and calculating eyes who walk among you like farmers examining cattle. They prod and poke, checking for disease or injury, evaluating your potential for various forms of service. You learn to recognize different types of buyers. Agricultural slave owners look for muscle and endurance, boys who can work fields from dawn to dusk. Household masters seek a different quality: compliance, intelligence, a certain fragility that suggests you won't cause trouble. But there's a third category, and you learn to dread their visits most of all. These men dress in fine clothing and speak with cultured accents. They smell of expensive perfumes and wine, their fingers glittering with rings. When they examine you, their touch lingers in ways that make your skin crawl. They're looking for something specific, a combination of youth and beauty that has nothing to do with labor and everything to do with something darker. The slave market in Athens assaults every sense. Sound hits you first, hundreds of voices haggling, crying, pleading, commanding. Smell comes next, including unwashed bodies, fear, sweat, urine, and something else you can't identify, but that makes your stomach turn. Then you see it, and you understand why older slaves warned you to keep your eyes down. Naked bodies arranged in rows like merchandise. Children barely old enough to walk standing beside their mothers, eyes wide with confusion. Old men with broken spirits and bent backs, their value measured in whatever strength remains in aging muscles. And everywhere, buyers circling like sharks, pointing and discussing prices as if the people on platforms can't hear every word. Because to them, you can't. You're not people anymore. You're cleaned and oiled before your sale. Not out of kindness, but because clean merchandise fetches higher prices. Oil makes your skin gleam in sunlight, highlighting lean muscles you've developed during the journey. Someone has decided you're too pretty for field work, and you're positioned with household slaves, the ones destined for indoor service. The auctioneer's voice booms across the market as he describes your attributes: your age, region of origin, physical condition. He mentions your pleasing appearance and gentle temperament, code words that make certain buyers lean forward with interest. Bidding starts low, but climbs quickly as more men join the competition. You stand frozen on the platform, trying to disappear into yourself as strange hands examine your body. Someone forces your mouth open to check your teeth. Another tests the strength of your grip. A third runs fingers through your hair, commenting on its texture and color. You're not a person anymore. You're an object being evaluated for purchase. The winning bidder is a man named Lysander, though you won't learn his name until later. All you see now is his satisfied smile as he counts out silver, his eyes already possessing you before the transaction is complete. He's middle-aged and well-fed, with soft hands of someone who's never done manual labor. His tunic is expensive silk, dyed deep purple, that proclaims wealth and status. When he looks at you, there's something in his expression that makes you want to run, even though chains make escape impossible. Lysander owns a large household in the wealthy district of Athens. His house is bigger than your entire village. Servants scurry through corridors carrying trays of food and wine, their movements quick and nervous. You notice that many of them are young men. All of them are beautiful in different ways. All of them wear the same look of resigned despair you're beginning to recognize as the face of captivity. The overseer who claims you from Lysander is named Demetrius. He's a former slave himself, purchased young and worked his way up through a combination of intelligence and ruthlessness. Now he manages household slaves with an iron fist, understanding better than anyone how to break spirits and ensure compliance. He explains the rules as he leads you through the house. You will be fed twice daily, barley porridge in the morning, bread and olives in the evening. You will be given clean clothes once per week. You will bathe when ordered, eat when ordered, sleep when ordered. You will speak only when spoken to. You will never look a free person directly in the eyes. You will never refuse an order, no matter what that order might be. And then comes the part that makes your blood freeze. You are here to serve the master and his guests in whatever capacity they require. This service may involve pouring wine, serving food, cleaning rooms, or providing entertainment. The nature of this entertainment, Demetrius explains with a cruel smile, will become clear in time. Some slaves resist at first, he continues, but resistance only leads to pain. Compliance, on the other hand, can lead to certain privileges, better food, a warmer place to sleep, perhaps even small personal possessions. Your new quarters are in the basement, a series of small cells where male slaves sleep. Each cell contains a straw mattress, a thin blanket, and a chamber pot. The walls are thick stone, designed to muffle sound. You quickly learn why this is necessary. Before we continue with this dark journey through ancient Greek slavery, if you're finding this historical content valuable and want to learn more hidden truths about the past, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. The other slaves welcome you with a mixture of sympathy and warning. There's Marcus, a boy about your age who's been here for 2 years. His eyes hold depths of pain that seem impossible for someone so young. There's Alexios, older and scarred, who tells you in whispered conversations about the special guests who visit the house and what they expect from the entertainment. And there's Philemon, barely 14, but with the haunted expression of someone much older. He was once the son of a small merchant family, until his father's business failed and creditors seized everything, including the children. He's been in the house for 6 months, and he's the one who explains what really happens during the symposiums. Philemon describes the preparation rituals with a voice empty of emotion, as if he's talking about someone else's life. The slaves are bathed and oiled, their bodies made smooth and gleaming. They're given special tunics, thin fabric that clings to their forms, designed more to entice than to clothe. Sometimes they're given jewelry, golden bracelets or necklaces that mark them as ornamental rather than useful. The symposium was supposed to be the height of Greek intellectual life. These were sophisticated affairs where educated men gathered to discuss philosophy, politics, and art. The greatest minds of the ancient world would recline on couches, debating the nature of virtue and justice while slaves served wine and delicate foods. But as Philemon explains with dead eyes, when wine flowed freely and guests demanded more intimate entertainment, philosophy quickly gave way to something much darker. The evening begins formally enough. Guests recline on couches arranged around the room, discussing topics of the day while slaves pour wine and present elaborate dishes. Conversation might touch on the nature of democracy, the philosophy of Socrates, or the latest military campaigns. These are educated, cultured men who pride themselves on their intellectual sophistication. But as the evening progresses and wine takes effect, the tone shifts. Philosophical discussions give way to cruder entertainment. Stories become dirty jokes. Intellectual debates devolve into boastful competition. And the slaves who have been serving silently around the edges suddenly find themselves the center of attention. It starts with small requests. Pour wine for this guest. Massage the shoulders of that one. Feed grapes to the man on the corner couch. Each task seems innocent enough, but you learn to read the signs. The way conversations quiet when you approach, the lingering touches that have nothing to do with serving wine, the way certain guests watch your movements with hungry eyes. The same men who wrote beautiful poetry about love and honor treated their human property like living toys to be used and thrown away at will. The philosophers who debated virtue by day had no problem using young slaves for their pleasure by night. The first time you're selected for special service, you're too naive to understand what's happening. A guest, a man old enough to be your grandfather, requests that you join him on his couch. He wants you to share his wine, he says, to discuss your homeland, to tell him about your family. His questions seem friendly at first. Where are you from? Do you miss your home? Are you being treated well? It's like the world's most disturbing small talk. His hand rests on your shoulder as he talks, then slowly moves to your back, then lower. You try to move away, but his grip tightens. Other guests are watching now, their conversations fading as they focus on the entertainment. What happens next burns itself into your memory with the clarity that only trauma can provide. Your protests are ignored. Your struggles are met with laughter from other guests. The feeling of helplessness as hands hold you down, as clothing is torn away, as your childhood ends in the most brutal way possible. And the whole time, these monsters are probably thinking they're being sophisticated because they're quoting poetry while they destroy you. Afterwards, you lie in your cell and stare at the stone ceiling, trying to understand how the world could contain such cruelty. Your body aches, but the emotional wounds cut deeper. You're not even a person anymore. You're a thing to be used and discarded. A source of entertainment for men who write poetry about the beauty of the human soul. But this is only the beginning. Over the following months, you learn that what happened that first night was considered mild by the standards of the house. Some guests have specific preferences, particular cruelties they enjoy inflicting. Others compete to see who can break a slave's spirit most completely. The overseer encourages this behavior, knowing that broken slaves are obedient slaves. You discover that the household operates on a complex hierarchy of abuse. The newest slaves bear the worst treatment, serving as fresh meat for guests' appetites. Those who survive long enough might be promoted to different roles. Personal servants to less violent masters or kitchen workers who rarely interact with guests directly. But promotion requires more than just survival. It requires complete surrender of dignity, a willingness to participate in your own destruction. Some slaves try to resist. Marcus attempted to escape during his first month, only to be caught and beaten so severely he walked with a limp for weeks. Alexios once refused a particularly degrading order and spent 3 days chained in the courtyard without food or water, exposed to the elements as an example to others. But resistance takes many forms. Some slaves retreat so deeply into themselves that they become like walking corpses, present in body but absent in spirit. Others develop a kind of desperate cunning, learning to predict their master's moods and avoid the worst punishments through careful observation and submission. And a few, the lucky ones, simply die. Whether from disease, injury, or sheer despair, death becomes freedom. You've seen slaves simply stop eating, stop responding to orders, Stop caring whether they live or die. The overseers usually replace them quickly. There's always a fresh supply of young bodies available at the slave markets. The slave trade was big business in ancient Greece. Young, attractive males commanded premium prices because of their dual value as domestic servants and objects of desire. The economics were simple and brutal. A healthy young male might cost the equivalent of several months' wages for a skilled craftsman. But that was a one-time investment that would provide years of service. Masters calculated the cost-benefit ratio with the same cold precision they applied to buying livestock or tools. The most valuable slaves were those who could serve multiple functions. You might pour wine at a symposium, clean the master's chambers during the day, and provide entertainment at night. This versatility made you worth more than a field hand who could only perform manual labor. But high value also meant high risk. The more money a master invested in you, the more he expected in return. Expensive slaves were held to higher standards and faced harsher punishments for failure. The logic was twisted but inescapable. Your worth as property made your suffering more intense. Modern historians have often glossed over or ignored the brutal realities of slavery in ancient Greece, preferring to focus on the intellectual and artistic achievements of the period. This selective memory does a disservice to the countless victims whose suffering made those achievements possible. The young men who suffered in houses like Lysander's had names, families, dreams, and fears, just like people today. They were not abstract historical figures, but real human beings whose pain and terror were as genuine as anything we might experience. Their voices have been silenced by time and deliberate forgetting, but their stories deserve to be told. By remembering their suffering and understanding the systems that enabled it, we honor their memory and perhaps prevent similar tragedies in our own time. The stone floors that once echoed with their footsteps are silent now, but the lessons of their lives continue to speak to anyone willing to listen. So the next time you see a beautiful statue from ancient Greece, or read about the philosophical achievements of classical civilization, remember the price that was paid in human suffering. Remember the boys who were sold by desperate families, the young men who died far from home, and the countless victims whose names are lost, but whose stories are not forgotten.